So, welcome back to Gone Digging. I'm going to show you how to make this look like this. Look how clean that is. If you haven't guessed, today what I'm going to be talking about is electrolysis. I find that honestly it's just as important to go out and find the stuff so it's not rotting away in the ground. And that's only half as important as preserving it, because if you're going to go out and find it, why let it rot in your backyard when you were going to go out and get it off the ground? You know, you're not going to document where it came from. You're not going to, you know, really save it for people in the future. So a lot of people don't really respect iron relics. Iron relics are one of my favorite things to find. They tell just as much of a story and a history as everything else does. I know there's a million videos on electrolysis out on the internet, but I just want to show you my version of how I do it. It's not rocket science, it's exactly like everybody else's, but it's just my take on electrolysis and why it's so important. So here's the setup. All right, so here is my electrolysis setup. So this isn't that fancy of a setup. In fact, it's actually pretty dirty. You can see right now I'm currently working on a Musket Barrel, and we're going to talk about this barrel in just a few moments. There's a lot of things people don't talk about when they talk about how to set up electrolysis, and I'm going to talk about that barrel in particular. So what I have here is a small tub that is going to be my tank source. This tub is generally big enough to do everything that I want to do. I don't need a huge tub, but I also can't really use something this small. It doesn't have enough volume, enough space. And the other reason that I like this is you need to change the water out. So you can buy a top, or the tops come with these tubs here, and you can latch these tops on so you're not going to spill this nasty water when you're moving it around. You can tell that my tub is pretty full, and this will evaporate over the course of using the tank, and you'll have to add water and all that stuff. But when I go to clean this out and get rid of this nasty funk that's in the bottom of here, I have a top to contain all this stuff so I don't spill it everywhere. I don't know if anybody else does that, but that's what I do. So now I told you about the tub and the container. What I'm going to tell you about is the battery charger that I use. Electrolysis is simply negatively and positively charging two items through electrolyte solution, which is this water here. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's basically not a chemical, but a mechanical breakdown of rust, which is basically rust is actually a form of pyrolysis. We're getting way deep into this, but here is my battery charger. I buy these battery chargers at yard sales. This one cost me $3. Don't spend a pile of money on these. The other part is you have to get one that you can adjust the amperage. You cannot get an automatic charger because it will not work. The new ones are computerized. Get the old stuff. Sears, rest in peace. These chargers are perfect. So there's my electrodes. This one's a little funky. So there's negative, here's positive. So now let's talk about the solution. I don't use some sort of fancy solution. I've done it with salt water. Salt water is not the way to go. It's going to mess your relics up eventually. So I don't use salt water. But what I use is Arm & Hammer super washing soda, like everybody else on the internet. Not that hard to do. Buy it at Walmart. It'll cost you like $3 or something. It's super cheap. I need to buy another one. And it lasts forever, and you can change your water out. So then let's talk about my sacrificial anodes. These are technically anodes, and you can see right here that from top to bottom, these were in the water on the bottom more. Ooh, look at that nastiness. Were in the water on the bottom more when I had a lower water level, so they're thinner. But these are graphite rods. You can find carbon plates, graphite rods. I actually bought these off of eBay. I got a package made in China. It says save this label. I don't know what for. And they weren't that expensive, and they last a very long time. They don't put off harmful stuff. They don't put off harmful things like stainless steel does. Stainless steel will last the longest, but it is the worst for you. Don't do it. When stainless steel breaks down, it has all this crap that causes cancer when it floats around in the water, heavy metals and stuff like that. So you don't need gloves to do this if you don't care about dirty hands or dirty fingers. Generally I don't, but the wife doesn't like it. No specific, I just put a little bit of superwashing soda into some water, a little more than, when I do my first batch, I'll put like maybe a half a cup of the superwashing soda in a tub this size. Obviously your tub is going to be different size, so you're going to need more or less depending on your tub. I initially do it in hot water so that the washing soda dilutes and mixes really well, so I have a good electrolyte solution. And then I have my carbon rods here. I connect them to the positive. I always leave them connected because I'm silly and I don't remember that positive goes to the sacrificial stuff. So now, let's talk about this piece right here. The number one main thing you have to do, this is a colonial era servants or farmers hoe or whatever it is. I don't pop or chip any of this stuff. What I use is I try to find a good side that has good metal, and I will use a file and I'll file one little spot down till I have a good connection that will allow the electricity to transfer through the metal. Now, that said, not all metals are created equal. That is colonial era, probably the mid 1700s, before lots of horses and lots of the unfortunate period of slavery in America, where people did everything by hand. Now, fast forward to this barrel right here. This is a musket barrel I found in the river from the American Civil War. Probably a Sharps barrel. It's very short, but what you can see is lots of degradation to the metal there and metal there, and I have I have had a difficult time getting a good contact on this piece of metal. And there's a reason. It's because the metal is so saturated with rust, it's just not going to allow the electricity to transfer through the object evenly to break down the surface rust on the outside. So unfortunately, that barrel is in the condition that it is in. And there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to change it. In fact, if I leave it in electrolysis long enough, what will happen is I will have a big pile of carbon and junk on the bottom and just a little bitty piece of a barrel where it was connected to the electrode. Or to the alligator clip. But basically I can rot that thing away to nothing using electricity in this form. So you have to be careful with electrolysis. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is work on making my connection. What I will do is tap it off. And then, so I'm using just a pretty inexpensive file. And I will just get a good solid connection. And I will go all the way down to where I can see shiny metal. I know that this seems pretty invasive, but unfortunately this is the only way that I know how to do it. Some people will take a small drill bit, drill a hole, and then apply a self-tapping screw into that hole. That will work. In fact, sometimes that works even better for getting a good connection interior. But for a lot of the objects that I do, this is just fine. And you don't need a big spot. All you need is a good solid connection that your alligator clip will work through. All right. The real test of your connection is when you actually get the material, get the item actually in the into electrolysis. So, and I will do. I'll look a couple different places here. When we talk about electrolysis, these are the most difficult spots because you can't get the right area. Because the electricity travels through the water, it's very difficult to get it through in these center sections here. Actually, that looks like a pretty good discrete place right there to, yeah. So that's going to make a good solid connection right there. That is good solid steel. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So, and often with an item like this, I will suspend this item across the top of the tank so that just a portion of it hangs in. So there we go. I think I got a good connection spot point. I'm pretty sure of it. I can see good metal there. I can see good metal there. It's good and smooth on the interior. So we're going to go ahead and work through that. All right, so there you go. We've got a really strong connection right here. There you go, right there. We've got a really strong connection. I had to take a little farther down, but in the metal than I wanted, but it won't be really noticeable because once all this rust comes off and I end up coating it, which we're going to talk about, it will be good to go. But what you'll notice now, to know that you really have a strong connection, is you can see water movement here around my positive electrode, and what that is, that's bubbles forming, and eventually this whole thing will bubble up and start making like kind of this frothy kind of mixture. A piece like this I'm going to do kind of slow. I'm going to run it at, I got to set it on 12 amps right now. We're not getting 12 amps to the actual piece though because of how everything works. I will end up with probably 6-8 hours. Then I'm going to check it because like I said, what I don't want to do is run it over. And then as I do this, I'm going to adjust the piece in the water. I'm going to put this piece in the bottom so that this is getting treated, because currently right now, because it's not in the water, it's not getting treated. So I need to treat all of this as well. And then we're going to take pieces like this, like these are cannonball fragments, and we're going to make them look like this. So we're going to get this piece to clean bare metal, and I'm going to treat this, and I'm going to show you how I do that, how I treat all this stuff all at one time. All right, so I've got probably about 12 hours on this piece of metal, and we're gonna go and look and see what the progress is. As you can see, I've changed my clothes a lot of times gone by, but I try to keep it limited. So let's go see what we got. So starting to begin with, I can see that right here, I've got some separation in some of the metals. Not really metal, but rust. So I'm starting to get some clean going there. Look at that, the thing's just flaking off, and that's flaking off pretty nicely. So let's take it out. Let's see what we got. Unhook the clamp. Make sure you're unplugged. All that good jazzmo. And there you go. So there is one side of it completely removed. You can see that it wants to come apart there. So we're going to take our time and easily remove this rust. There just may not be a lot of metal left here, so we're just going to see how it goes. So I've got it in the sink, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it in the trash can and kind of tap some of this stuff off, because I don't want all the rust going into my sink. So I'll see if I can set this up for you. All right, I've got my trusty file here. What we're going to do is I'm just going to tap it and see how this stuff comes off. If it doesn't flake off and it doesn't pop off, I'll put it back in the electrolysis and allow it to continue to cook for a little while. But again, being careful as not to overdo it. There we go. There we go. It's actually cleaned up really nicely. All right, so here's what we got. I've got a worse surface over here than I do over here. And the reason I have that is because the electrode was closer to this side, the positive, than it was on this side. So it removed some of it, but it didn't quite remove enough. So I'm going to put it back in the cook, and I'm going to remove this side of the rust, and then this side of the rust, and then this side should remain pretty good. We're going to probably give this about 5 or 6 hours. We're not going to go forever on this, and we'll see where we're at. Probably the best thing to do would be to leave this blade out here and try to do as much as this side as we can. So I think that's what we're going to do, and we're going to see where we go from there. All right, so what you can see is I have the one fin of the tool up, and down low what I have is I have bubbles going on, all kinds of bubbles and stuff there, water swirling, so I know it's working good. So now, because I had bare metal, I didn't have to polish a spot to get us started. So now I'm going to let it roll for about 6 to 8 hours, since I've already started on something, or since I've already got the other side partially done, and then we're going to work on that eyelet. So we've got a little bit more time to make this happen and make it work. The big thing about this is low and slow. Take your time. Don't leave any rust on the object, or you're going to get rust back on it. So this is probably going to be the longest electrolysis video on YouTube right now. I hope it's the most in-depth. And it makes the most sense. I don't know, we'll see when we're done. All right, another 6 to 8 hours have gone by. Let's see what we got. So we're really cooking along now. If you notice that we've got some rust already starting to form here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So unplug, and the bubbles stop, and connect. Golly day, now I got to fish that out. That stinks. All right, so I got it out, and look at all that stuff just ready to come off. Not all of it's ready to come off, but it's okay, because most of it is. So all the stuff in the center just ready to come off. On the outside of this right here. Probably when I'm done with this one, I'm just going to put this stuff in here. I'm going to have to clean my tank out and get it back to good. But look at that, all that stuff's just peeling right on off. So we're going to work on that and clean this up. We'll use a brush on this, and then once we get all this stuff cleaned out. So on the inside of this thing, because electrolysis doesn't work that well, what I have to do is use just a little bit more force to clean this out. And it's still coming out. This has got a pretty big eye in it, so we're pretty good with that. So I'm going to clean all this up. I'm going to use this bucket, and then I'm going to get rid of all this water when I'm done. Alright, so here we go. We've got it all cleaned up. You'll notice there are some spots of little bit of rust here and there. I'm not super worried about it on this piece because I'm going to use the rust converter on it and that will convert it. But if you have anything of higher importance relic wise, you want to get that off of there. You'll also notice on the back, you can see the definite line where on the top the piece was in the water versus out of the water. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry. And I'll probably give it, I don't know how long we're going to give it, but we're definitely going to let it dry. I'm going to sit it right in this little fancy cup I have there. We're going to let that hang out until it's dry, like this piece is. Alright, so we've come back and everything's dried now. I'm going to show you what happens in a matter of hours of a piece of metal drying that is unprotected, unfinished. So if you will look right there, that is the same piece we've been working on. And look at all that surface rust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat and protect this nice piece of metal here. I'm probably going to have to run it, as you can see I got some stuff on the fingers. I'm going to have to run it through a wire brush, but look at that. Look at the other side. It's covered in surface rust already. We're going to run a wire brush over it, and then I'm going to cover it in Gimpler's rust converter. And what Gimpler's does is it takes and it chemically stops the rusting process, and it turns all of this stuff right here into this pretty dark, shiny finish. Gimpler says that you can, what is it says? Chemically converts rust into an inert black protective barrier that can be painted over. Obviously, I'm not going to paint this, but I really like how this finishes. Some people don't like this dark black shiny cover, but I like this, and it makes the relic look finished. I really prefer Gimpler's over acrylic or black spray paint or whatever, because you actually know if it's coated and protected appropriately. So we're going to protect this, and we're going to use some Gimpler's on this, and we're going to run it over. Okay, so I've taken and I've cleaned and wire brushed this as best as I can. I don't have a mechanical wire brush. I'm shaking my Gimpler's up. For those who are interested, if you buy Gimpler's and you are converting a bunch of stuff and taking care of a bunch of iron, you know, maybe you need a gallon size, but to be honest with you, you don't need this size jug. I know you can't see that, but this stuff has about a 9-month shelf life, so you don't need this much. I'm going to pour it into this right here. I already put too much in there, but I'm also going to treat this barrel at the same time as I do this right here. A little goes a absolute long way when doing this stuff. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to just start working it in. I'm going to remove any other piece of iron that I may drip it on. I think I've gotten most of the excess off of here. I'm just going to start working it in. This piece right here will probably take 2 or 3 coats. And that's just to make sure that I treat it appropriately. It's going to turn the piece to a purple color. You know, it's going to make you feel weird when you're doing it. Tingly inside. But make sure that you cover it well as you do it. It's the only thing to do. Alright, so what you see is that crazy color purple or bluish color on there, and then what you see down here is what the Gimpler's looks like original. You know, don't pour this stuff back in there. It's no sense of wasting all of this because you wanted to save just a little bit of that. They recommend to discard this. Generally, it's good for at least a day. So I have the item I've been working on here. And then over here, I have the Musket Barrel that I've been working on. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna allow a few hours for this to dry, pretty much overnight. And then we're gonna pick it up and we're gonna do another coat of this. So when next time you see this coat, it will not look anything at all like this crazy blue purple color. Same thing with this. It's so funky right now, but it won't look like this at all when it dries. So we'll go ahead and we'll fast forward, say, 6 hours. All right, so everything's dry, and I'm going to show you what we've got here. So actually, it's not completely dry, but it's close. So this is going to be the first coat, and this is kind of how it turns out after the first coat. I'll have to let this piece dry, and what I'll do is I'll recoat this again, and it'll turn out just like that. And you can see I still have some down there, so we'll use that. But this will be all finished, and I'll post a picture at the end when it's all finished. So let's look at the barrel. The barrel actually turned out really well, all things considered. So it looks pretty much done. And that's as far as I'm going to let this go, right there. So I hope you like this in-depth kind of electrolysis kind of review, and how I do electrolysis and how I take care of iron relics with preservation and all that stuff. I know that this is going to be a longer episode than normal, but I wanted to make it as in-depth as possible so that it made as much sense for someone trying to do this on their own. As always, if you like this video or you like this kind of stuff, reach down and click that like button. If you have any comments or ideas as to how I could do this better, please leave that in the comments, because you know, to me this isn't an exact science, but some guys are super good at this, and I want to make my preservation efforts as best as possible. So leave me a comment if you like it, anything I could do better, or do worse, whatever. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Gone Digging.